Hello everyone, Bavar from PTC or Port Terra Conglomerate here. We're an Australian industrial organisation offering you everything from mining and salvaging through to all your repair, rearm and refueling needs. We're here with our latest video to give you an overview of some of the methods and locations that pirates use to hunt. Whilst we can theorise how this might best be gone about, it is honestly pretty hard to beat direct interviews with the pirates themselves, as well as research through the various YouTube channels. As such, we will start with the main methods pirates use to find their targets, their preferred targets, and typical locations that the piracy occurs in, as well as ship choices. Much like miners learning what minerals are where, or haulers learning their routes, pirates have had to learn how we as industrial players operate depending on our speciality, as well as general behavioural patterns. With that in mind, we will cover how miners are manhandled, rocks are rustled, and how haulers are hustled. When it comes to mining ships, most of the pirates focused on the trade lane or travel lane between Lyria to Arc L1, naturally targeting prospectors and moles filled with quant. In addition to this, they would also target haulers bursting at the seams with the stuff between Arc L1 and Area 18. It should be noted, with regards to the haulers and the mining ships, when scanned, it may still read as mixed minerals, but it's fairly safe to assume what you're carrying considering the area that you're operating in. After all, why else would a miner be transiting between Lyria to Arc L1 or a hauler from Arc L1 to Area 18? In addition to working the trade lanes, some of the more enterprising pirates scout around the OMs and the various outposts on Lyria and in the Hurston Moons, as well as embedding themselves. To quote one of the interviewed pirates, "I prefer hunting around the smaller moon mining locations. There you may find a sneaky hauler popping into each location and filling up their cargo hold." One thing some of us tend to do is check stock levels. I know they're shared between servers, but a good stock level tells you that the moon and this particular outpost may well be worth the wait, as a hauler is never that far away. A bad stock level is also good news, as it means a hauler is not going to be back for a while. Then it's off to the orbital markers and to check the additional outposts. With that in mind, it does underscore the benefits of using a smaller hauler with less cargo placed at risk, but managing more frequent runs. I.e., would you rather lose 30% of a raft's profit margin but learn there are pirates in an area, or 30% of a C2's profit margin as you've had to trundle from outpost to outpost, slowly trying to fill it up? One other tactic up their sleeves that typically gets broken out when things are a tad slower is pretty much running delivery missions or packages, as pirates and naturally people undertaking these missions tend to visit trade locations which may well have haulers at them grabbing cargo. And in addition to this, a concluding remark on pirate scouting methods. Planets on the dark side, to be specific, are good hunting grounds, as traders and miners are often pinging repeatedly to see the ground, as well as flying with headlights on, which makes spotting them easier. Naturally, certain ships can be preferred as targets depending on circumstances, for example a larger pirate group versus a smaller pirate group. As such, we will cover specifically the two responses of the interviewed pirates I was able to interview for this piece regarding their preferences, as well as what's been observed from two other pirate organizations that we know of. One interesting difference between the two pirates that we were able to directly interview was their attitude to going after rock miners. One of them didn't really want to bother with them, as they perceived going after them as being effectively like shooting fish in a barrel, likely due to the typical trend of most rock miners of not having security and primarily working solo. Two of the organizations whose videos we were able to examine, as well as one of the other interviewed pirates, either viewed them as a valid option or as a preferred target. Their reasoning being You don't need to bother negotiating with them, as the destruction of the rock results in most, if not all, of the ore being left behind in a crate that can be subsequently trucked onto your ship as the pirate and be sold. Before this appetizer for piracy post cargo refactor was in effect, they used to have to steal them out of the back of the rocks or extort their victims. They also stated that rock hunting allowed them to sidestep the issue of combat loggers by just killing them up front and then being able to steal the cargo at their leisure. When it comes to going after cargo haulers and miners going to sell, one of the interviewed pirates mentioned not really bothering with any haulers smaller than a connie. They primarily focused on the larger haulers due to the larger capital outlays if trading or time investment if carrying all products for sale. This likely being due to the pilot and crew, if there are any, being more invested in not losing their cargo, the funds invested or the time invested, and the attendant profits. Their numbers did keenly affect their target choice, though, and I quote, "We usually have smaller crews, so we usually prefer smaller to mid-sized targets, like the prospectors, the moles, cutties, freelancers, nomads, and the like. When we're able to rally a few more of the good old boys, or get a stowaway on board the ship, hitting C2s and connies and cats is also on the cards." Unsurprisingly, pirates go where we as industrialists go, and at the moment that's primarily the Golden Triangle spanning Lyria to Arca 1 to Area 18, as well as what I'm tending to call the Hurston Hotpot, it being the rock mining sites and Larinar outposts on the Hurston Moons. Do note when operating in these areas, saying you're not carrying anything worthwhile is about as likely to be believed as a fuel efficient Hercules. I will also emphasize for the traders among us that pirates can scan your ships to see exactly what you're carrying and the amounts. To quote one of the pirates when asked where they prefer to operate, Hurston, definitely. It's where the most Haddonite is. Rock miners can't seem to get enough of the stuff or avoid the glow of fast profits. When it comes to both rock mining and ship mining, it was said, and I always check the outposts first because that's where the laziest targets are. No one should be operating near them. As far as ship choices go, that's typically dictated by the target and how inconspicuous the pirates want to be. An example is one of the pirates who would like to go after the rock miners saying they were quite a fan of the Pisces and any other smaller civilian ships that were quite nippy in atmo. They wanted their ships to fly beneath the radar and not ruffle anyone's jimmies for any of their twitchier victims out there. To quote, "The fact that any ship with the space to hold a box can be used for this means that in true pirate fashion, any ship can be a pirate ship when looking at rock miners. When I go rock mining myself, I do so intending to devour every other miner I find out there on a given moon until either my nomad is full of boxes or I have bounty hunters breathing down my neck." With regards to preferred ship choices when setting up mantis traps for mining vessels and haulers, obviously they'll be the mantis, as well as ships like the Vanguard Sentinel, the Warlock for their EMP capabilities. In addition to this, sometimes you'll see cutties or other light fighters. Before I get on to my final remarks, I'll mention one of the things that I came across that hadn't really been mentioned anywhere else, as well as a final quote from one of the pirates. During one of their latest streams, Mongrel Squadron remarked that Grade A components do in fact make quite a difference to your ship's ability to resist EMP and distortion attacks, with one of them saying that they almost didn't want to go after ships that had bothered to A-grade their components due to the enhanced time to disable the target and the attendant effort required. The final quote being, "Given the cargo refactor is getting so close, I think rock hits are a good indication that future piracy will likely get more brutal and include less negotiation. The emphasis will be on the hauler to hail first as a defensive measure. I hope you've enjoyed this video and have found it quite useful when considering how pirates are trying to find their targets, as well as how that affects where you choose to operate, and what risks you can afford to take when considering what ships you're likely to be up against and where you're likely to get attacked or ambushed. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a thumbs up or a comment, and if you want to see more of this sort of thing, by all means click that subscribe button. This is Bavar from PTC, signing off.